There is one fundamental requirement in Sahaj Marg. It is a very serious requirement without which Abhyasis condemn themselves perhaps to no progress at all, or by Babuji's grace to some progress, but not to the level of progress or the velocity of progress that we should normally have when we practice assiduously. Anger and intolerance are two things. Prejudice is the third thing. But prejudice and anger are also part of intolerance, as I understand it, you see. Prejudice means I am not able to tolerate what is not mine, what is not my culture, what is not my language, what is not my race, what is not my continent. In today's life, we see this very, very strictly regularized by governments. Issue of passports is the least. Visas have been made commercial ventures. When God helped us once upon a time to roam this earth free of all encumbrances and obstacles. Fortunately, today the birds, insects, spores, pollen, they are able to cross borders. But a day may come when nations with high technology may erect some sort of invisible barrier rising 1 mile high into the sky so that even birds cannot fly out of their countries. And that will mean the death of those birds because they need to migrate, they need to do so many things outside their own environment. You know, bees don't gather honey from the flowers in your garden. If you have a beehive at home, they don't gather honey in your own house. They have to go out. Sometimes as much as 7, 8, 10 miles and bring back honey. Other bees from other hives come to your garden. See, nature has not favored what we human beings call incest. There must be cross-pollination, there must be cross-fertilization, and most of all, there must be the pollinated and the pollinator, fertilized, fertilizer, and according to modern concepts, the freedom that is bestowed on human beings is not even thought of in Vedic literature or in any ancient literature of any ancient culture. There have always been heterosexual marriages, for instance. One never hears of a bull mating with a bull. So these aberrations, they are aberrations, you see. I wouldn't call them vices because they are not. There is something in the human mind, some perversity, which instead of just attracting people to drink or to drugs, drags them deeper and deeper into other forms of perversities, aberrations, both mental and physical. And unfortunately in today's world, especially in the developed world, freedom is taken to mean license. My master was very careful to distinguish freedom from license. He said freedom is the freedom to do what is right. To do what is wrong can never be labeled freedom. It is amazing that modern developed world, advanced societies, which are quite prosperous, well-housed, well-fed, intelligent, are yet allowed to be perverted in certain avenues of life, such as sex, when they consider it immoral to take away, say, 10 sheets of paper from where you work, or to make a telephone call from the office without paying for it. But it is perfectly legal to take away another man's wife. So what sort of codes, moral, civil, criminal, do we work under which permit these aberrations? What the scripture would call transgressions. What I would say are merely deviations from a set course. You say when a pilot deviates from an established flight plan, he is as prone to disaster as personal lives are prone to disaster when there are such deviations. This is not a moral judgment. I would like to make it clear because Sahaj Marg does not moralize. Sahaj Marg offers help. Sahaj Marg offers teaching. Sahaj Marg offers, most of all, the help of the ultimate personality, we call the special personality, my revered master, Babuji Maharaj. If you don't want to accept it, he says, well, you know, I am here. And he often took the analogy of a fire built in a fireplace in winter. If you want to warm yourself, you go and sit near the fire. You don't expect the fire to walk to you. Oh, the sun is shining, yes, but if you are inside the house, it will no more warm you than the fireplace. You have to go out into the sun. For cold, you can huddle in some hole beneath the earth like what is it called, Golem in the Lord of the Rings. Live an artificially prolonged life by virtue of having possessed a power it should not have had. In a similar fashion, our people today, again especially in the advanced world, developed world, have powers which they probably should not possess and which confers on them a high degree of confidence which they should not have, arrogance which is anti-human, pride which is not tolerated in any spiritual literature. Pride goeth before a fall is an English state saying that we have inherited from them. Of course, we have the same thing in Sanskrit and in all our regional languages in India. But, you know, I am stating it in English because the Western world today, which is the developed world, all speak English to some degree or the other, and two very great nations which claim to be divided by a common language speak English of one sort or the other. So what is wrong with these cultures that this deviation is accepted as a personal freedom guaranteed to the individual? What is this freedom that even churches have started to recognize them? Not only recognize them, but actually perform marriages of same sex in churches. Man can perhaps, using biblical language, transgress God's laws. But is a churchman, a padri, a father in Holy Church permitted to transgress? You see, Babuji once said, we should pray for all. Prayer is an act of compassion. We don't look into who deserves prayer, because how low are the mighty fallen? We pray for them. How low are the stupid fallen, the foolish fallen, the ignorant fallen? We have compassion for them because they did not have the necessary intelligence or the education or the willpower which could have prevented their fall. But how low are the mighty fallen, the educated, the powerful, people who are senators, rich, high court judges, Supreme Court judges, in flagrant violation of man-made laws, and as the Bible accepts, Christianity accepts, Judaism accepts, of God-given laws. So Babuji said, there is no such thing as automatic obedience of any law, unless such laws are made personal by assuming that they are important for our evolution, by assuming that they are essential for our freedom to live free, to be able to perform all our duties which are right and correct and the benefit not only to ourselves but to all humanity, to all life. So unless each individual human appreciates the force of this reasoning, that every law has to be personalized. The laws are universal in application, but an individual will accept it in his life and apply it to his life only if he is able to say, yes, this law is applicable to me. Otherwise, no teaching is of any use. Teaching in schools is useless, colleges is useless. Senators are as culpable as rickshaw pullers. Judges are as bad as the people they are setting on judgment. And what does God do? He recedes into the background and says, I am not wanted. They are able to make their own laws for themselves. They will enjoy the consequences. I don't want to say suffer, because in the idea of bhog, which is paramount in Sahaj Marg, that we are here to work off the effect of our thoughts and actions, which we call samskaras. Babuji uses the word bhog, that is, undergo the fruit of action. So we don't use the word suffer. We say you have to undergo the fruit of this action and this line of thought. So all have to undergo the fruit of their own thoughts and actions, whatever they may be. They may be pleasure, they may be pain. Sahaj Marg says both are equally bad. If it is pleasure, it draws you more and more towards itself, so that you form more samskaras instead of working off the existing samskaras. The other day I gave you the example that you are sweeping and people are throwing waste paper again on the ground, and so the sweeping is eternal. Like the labor of Hercules. I am not sure I am right. Georgian stables, cleaning. So we must help nature with a capitalized N, which stands for God, which we stand for Master, to help us, because he is able to remove mountains of grossness in one cleaning session. But if you go on adding, it adds more to his labor. And Babuji said, speaking of preceptors, I think it was in the early 70s, that if Abhyasis go to see him, the preceptor of their local center should do cleaning thoroughly and send them to Shahjahanpur, so that Babuji would have time to raise them in the ladder, rather than waste 3 or 4 days in cleaning them before they are ready for being elevated spiritually, however minutely, however minuscule that grade may be. But preceptors don't understand the need for cleaning. They are happy, and worse, they are proud to say, I gave him 20 sittings before he came, but what is the effect? I must see the effect. Otherwise, this is like the Mad Hatter's tea party, where empty teacups go round and round. And you have to look for a full teacup, and then the pot is empty. Anybody who has read Alice in Wonderland knows about this story. See, all these old fables have a wealth of meaning hidden in them, but we only treat them as children's tales. children's books published by beautiful publishers or beautiful paper, beautifully bound and board, beautifully illustrated, and very unbeautifully expensive. I once bought a book of just 4 pages. The book was this thick, but each page was this thick. So we had 4 sheets, that means 8 pages. And the pound and the price was a whopping £8, 19 shillings in the old days. So you see, instead of compressing, they were expanding the page. High technology, modern printing presses which can print on Bible paper as well as on board this thick. And the money maker goes on making the money. And children are happy for the first time they see it, and then it goes into a corner for the next garage sale. So you see, this question of ignorance, the law says ignorance of the law is no excuse. I mean civil law, man-made law, in man-made courts, where men are judges. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. But today's courts say, we make the laws, you see, and we can amend them. But there are legislatures, there are parliaments which make laws, which amend the constitution made by the constitution makers of these old countries. 34th Amendment, 42nd Amendment, and one day we'll have an 82nd Amendment. And by the time this century ends, maybe the whole constitution will be new, something the founding fathers did not ever envisage. Because a constitution was supposed to be held sacred, inviolate. So when we twist and turn the constitution around and amend its provisions, we are only willfully changing a situation to our own advantage. It is like saying, amend the 10 commandments, thou shalt not kill, to thou shalt kill whomsoever thou desirest, provided what? Provided that nobody is able to oppose that killing. Because we cannot say, brother, because the story of Cain and Abel was a fratricide, as it is called. You cannot say father and son, it is rampant. Power makes you kill your father, makes the father kill off his children, because you don't want competitors before you are able to hand over yourself. Of course, there have been very noble causes, very noble cases rather, such as the one of the Emperor Babur of the dynasty here, the Mughal dynasty. Babur was number 1. When his son Humayun was dying, it is said Babur prayed to Allah, circled his son's bed 3 times, and then lay down on the next bed and gave up his life. The son was well. There have been very noble, very ennobling cases such as that, where life has been given for the sake of the other, rather than life taken for the sake of the self. Today's wars are all prejudicial wars. Race, religion. And it's a well-known saying that religious wars have killed more people than any other war. Very sad commentary on the level of the people, the level of their obedience to the laws of God, the level of their understanding of religion, the level of their willingness to do what religion says they should, and the level of their defiance, which is so much that they don't care about what the Bible says, what the other religious text says. Kill, kill, kill. As good as Cain and Abel. Because one country and another country fight, they are brothers. I remember when the World War II was being spoken about in Babuji's presence, and somebody was talking about prayer. He said, I'm asking you one thing. When the war was going on, in Germany all the churches were full with the Germans praying for victory. In England, all the churches were full with the people praying for victory. I am asking you one question, he said. Which prayer will be answered by God? Because both are his children. He just heard the prayer from both sides, and unlike Solomon not being able to decide in the stickless issue, he just said, let them fight it out. They are both my children. Let them fight it out. You see what a state of mind my master should have been to have spoken about it in such a term of despair, that God could not decide. I mean, either he should have destroyed both, because one would have been partial. And the God of Christianity is not a select God who has a select people as his own people and a select land for his people. For him, all our brothers, all our sons, all are his children, grandchildren, whatever. If tomorrow China is going to fight the rest of the world, he will favor neither this nor that. He will just immunize himself from all the information flowing into him, the dreadful information of what is going on in the beautiful world that he created. And perhaps regret having created it. Is this what he created as the pinnacle of all life? The human? He should ask himself. Fortunately for us, or fortunately for God, in Sahaj Marg, my master has discovered that God can have no mind. Because if he has a mind, he would think, I am God, and then he sets himself apart from us. Duality comes into a picture where there can only be one, unity. If God had a mind, he would have plans. And then he would probably have destroyed England for Germany or Germany for England's sake. And voila, there is a big criminal added to smaller criminals, lesser criminals. He could very well have said, now fight the other nations of the world and establish my supremacy. You know, like the God of Israel said. Our God, when I say our God, I don't mean Indian God. There is no such thing as Indian God or Christian God or any such thing. There is God, and he is common to all of us. Our God says, silence. His silence, as Babuji said, speaks volumes. For Babuji Maharaj said, silence is the language of God. The opposite being what we have in the Bible, the Tower of Babel. Babbling tongues, using many tongues, as they say in the Bible, for languages, destroying each other, creating confusion, separating themselves. You know, in India, this tragedy occurred some, 30 years ago? Linguistic division of India into linguistic states. The greatest tragedy to befall India. And it is still there. And it was an act of shameless acquiescence to some mongrels, you know, who wanted languages, the dividing factor. I call them mongrels because they were yapping all the time. And the government was too unsure of itself. A British government would have just shot out those dissenters and finished the game. I'm not advocating it. But had the British been in power, that's what would have happened. No government can tolerate a bisection, a trisection, a quadrisection, and a multi-sectioning of its nation, of its territory, into linguistic basis. It's like the army saying, we control South India, Navy controls the coastal India, and the Air Force controls Central India. Even in war-torn countries, there is only one dictator. You cannot have two dictators sharing power. So you see the tragedy of language, the tragedy of thinking, the tragedy that was, according to the Bible, begun in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve, naked till then, magnificent in their nakedness, happy, healthy in their nakedness, unaware of their nakedness, totally unself-conscious, ate of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. There began all criminality, all disobedience to law, whether human or divine, and isolation from the rest of the people, and hiding away with a sense of shame, and running out of the garden of bliss to create their own lives in shame, in danger, and without any mystery in their lives. So you see what a tragedy humanity has sort of, engineered for itself, dramatized for itself, played out the drama in the stage of life on this earth. Who's to weep, who's to laugh? Because we have sometimes to laugh at these tragedies to save ourselves from insanity. If you are to weep for every small thing, what of the bigger things? If I am to think of Cain and Abel and say, oh, I hope my children will not kill each other like this, I would have no peace of mind. Isn't it? Today in this world, people are terribly afraid, not just of wars, not just of atomic power or whatever it is, not just because of the memory of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but of what can be or perhaps will be or is surely like to be the next Nagasaki in another continent. The dropper of the bombs being the same entity as it dropped 40 or 50 years ago on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Because criminals remain criminals, warmongers remain warmongers, always preaching their own variety of, what shall we say, a moral necessity, that we have to have a war to ensure peace. It is like telling a poor man, you must go hungry before you can have a full stomach. Logic. Unless your stomach is empty, how can it be full? But he says, I will die. Not to die. Using the Cockney English, which could mean not to die or not today. You see? So with such reprehensible misuse of language, lying language, like we say in India, when you ask in North India, what do you do? He says, I'm a liar. I say, what sort of liar? He says, I'm a criminal liar. I say, wonderful. You should be the first man in jail because you're a criminal liar. He is only a civil liar, which means he calls you Mr. So-and-so and lies. No? Use of language betrays. We call sometimes, when people say things which they shouldn't in public, we call it a Freudian slip. I have more than a suspicion that under the clothes they wear, most of us have Freudian slips in another way. So what shall we do about it? So we are facing a sorry world, and as always, my master's voice was like all previous voices of the great, a voice in the wilderness of India. It is a telling fact that when I joined the mission in 1964 and went to see him, there were hardly 4 Abhyasis in Shahjahanpur itself. There were hardly 12 preceptors all over India. And there were perhaps 1,000 Abhyasis all over India. And he had been working from 1945. I joined the mission in 1964, 19 years. And when we asked Babuji, why in your own place there are so few Abhyasis? He said in Hindi, Diya Tale Andhera. That means under the lamp it is always dark. When you put a candle to burn, at the base of the candle there is a ring of darkness. So where the lamp shines, there is always darkness. No doubt that is why God in His wisdom put the sun far away from all of us. So that it does not create shadows, we create shadows. Every time you stand in the sun, you cast your own shadow. So, great psychologists, they called it the personal shadow, you know. You have a self, you have a shadow self, and as they say, as the sun sets, the shadow grows longer and longer, and perhaps after the sun has set, there's nothing but the shadow left. Therefore, evil is rampant at night, ghosts, evil spirits, dark plans, they're all laid in the darkness of night when nobody is able to, when all the rest of the world is sleeping. So Babuji said, God has no mind in his great wisdom, because if he had a mind, he would divide himself from the world or universe. He would be susceptible to thinking of himself as the God and the others as, you know, his devotees. He would decide to destroy or to, you know, protect or whatever. So nature in its wisdom, nature being used with a capitalized N, for God in its wisdom decided that there will be other lesser deities which will have minds, and those three were the first three to be called Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva, the creator, the protector, preserver and the destroyer. Because these functions were necessary. What is, you eat and you have to clean the plates. You live and you have to sweep the house, burn the refuse somewhere. In everything that we do, there are these three facets, these prime necessities of existence. So that was that. And what of the mind that man possesses? He said, you know, some elevated souls can possess actually a portion of the first mind of God. And then they have a divinized mind, which now works as the divine works, but without rancor, without judgment, without prejudice, for the welfare of all and to the unwelfare of none. Not giving by taking from somebody, but giving without taking from anybody else. And such men are called the great masters of this world, which, he added, may come about only once in 10,000 years, if at all. Therefore, he was always exhorting us, do it now, here, today, in my presence. For such a personality may not come for the next 10,000 years. And if it does come, none of you will be there at that time. The chance is very remote, 1 in billions. And if you are there at the same time, you may not be able to find him. If you find him, you may not be able to associate with him and use him like you are misusing him today. I remember after I joined the mission, I went to Shahjahanpur. I went to Bareilly, you know, where my company had another company relationship. And I was going to Lucknow, so we were passing through Shahjahanpur. I stopped on the way to ask for the address of the ashram mission. Nobody seemed to know. They all said Sri Ramakrishna mission. I said, no, Sri Ramchandra mission. Nobody knew. So I, without even making further effort, sitting in the car, I inquired and drove away. One chance lost. Proof of what Babuji said. I was within, you know, stone's throw of his house. But I didn't have the gumption to seek him out, get out of the car and walk a little and find out. I lost that opportunity. Second time, again on that same route, I stopped at a police post in a crossroad, and I said, do you know Sri Ramchandra Mission? Do you know Babuji Maharaj? He said, pointing to a small, tiny sweet seller shop, he said, go to that man, he will know. That is the place where we all used to eat, you know, jalebis and pedas for prasads. And he said, just down this gully. It was as simple as that. So I went down the gully, and the rest I have written about here. The first exposure is what the chapter is called, how I went to him, how I stayed on. I thought for a couple of hours, how I was compelled to stay on for 2 nights. Now it is history, but for me it is a most cherished memory of my life. Why I am saying this, if at the second time also had lost the way or inquired in the same stupid manner, I might not have met him, and then I would have said, okay, to hell with it. See. I can't find him. That's that. See. The danger that you can be next door to him and never find him is not only exemplified, by his neighbors, none of whom knew of him as a great man, but only thought he is Babuji, a retired writer of the court, Shahjahanpur court. And when he walked out of his house, they perfectly said, Ram Ram, Babuji, and he also said Ram Ram. Even more, you find in a novel called The Foundation, by a very wonderful science fiction writer called Isaac Asimov, where there's the first foundation, where there's the second foundation, and they're unable to find the second foundation. I won't reveal where it was, because I would like you all to read that book in 3 volumes. It's called a trilogy: Foundation, Foundation and Empire, Second Foundation. It is well worth reading, because there the story is about the misery that is enveloping the galaxy, which was one unit at that time, as portrayed in the book. A whole galaxy governed by one particular artificially created planet called Trantor, and where a man of vision was able to foresee 20,000 years of misery. And by following a certain plan which bore his name, he was able to condense that into 1,000 years of misery. Which is a telling fact that miseries cannot be completely written off. They can only be compressed. Same thing we have in our samskaras. Something Babuji always leaves behind, even after he has cleaned off the bulk of it. And when I asked him why, he said, it will teach lessons to be learnt. If I keep all of it, you will just be, down under its pressure, and you will never probably rise again. And what is the effect of these samskaras? He told me the story of an abhyasi who was not progressing at all, even after some years of practice. So one day he decided to go into the past of that abhyasi, past life of that abhyasi. And he found that this abhyasi had been a lady in a past life, very eager to advance in yoga of those days, gain liberation. And she had 4 children. And because they were a nuisance to her sadhana and an impediment to her progress, going against all the requirements of nature and of motherhood, she abandoned the 4 children on the banks of a river and ran off. And the screams of those children haunted her all her life, and the samskara was carried over into this life. And Babuji said, until I cut that samskara, she could not progress. Now I was able to see it, I cut it, then the progress started. You see what a samskara can be. We have heard of time fuses and long fuses in explosives, where a fuse will explode the device, say 5 minutes after you set fire to it, or 20 minutes, or tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. when the convoy passes with the VIP in it. But here is a fuse which is driven over lives. There's a famous story in the Mahabharata about Bhishma, the great sage who was condemned to lie on a bed of arrows at the end of his life, at the termination of the great war. While still alive, he asked Lord Krishna, what is this due to? What have I done that I am on a bed of arrows? I have examined 100 past lives, I have not found anything to justify this. Krishna smiled sympathetically, as Babuji always used to smile, yet with a twinkle in it, as Babuji always used to do, and said, Bhishma, you are a great man, perhaps the greatest, but your reach is restricted to 100 lives in the past. If you go further beyond, you will find that you are a prince once, out on a hunt, and you saw a snake, you took it by the tail, whirled it around your head and threw it on a thorn bush, where thousands of thorns pricked that body of that snake. This is the result. You see, no less a person than Bhishma, whose original name was Devavrata. He was called Bhishma because he took the vow of permanent celibacy so that his father could marry a woman he loved. And the father of that girl said, her children shall rule after you, not your son. He said, yes, I promise. He said, not enough, because how do I know your sons will not claim it? So the son had to take this vow, and since it's a terrible vow, he was called Bhishma, the one who took the terrible vow. He had to suffer the consequences of a foolish action of throwing a snake on a thorn bush. More than 100 lives afterwards as Bhishma. So let us not think of our thoughts and actions lightly, Nahi, kya hoga? What will happen? Okay, so you talk of samskara, but Chariji, I don't believe in it. Samskaras are for you foolish Indians, who are afraid of everything. You are afraid of eating, samskara. You are afraid of drinking, samskara. You have no pleasure in life, samskara. What do you live for, man? So I tell them, it would be good to see you in your next life. Just let you peep into your past life then and see what you said now. Unfortunately, it would have to be done to millions of people. And nobody will have the time. It's like walking into a hospital to see the patients in wartime. If it has 100 beds, it has 2,000 patients. And every hospital is like that. So how to impress upon people that whatever has happened, the great master is there to look after that part of your life. For heaven's sake, don't go on creating samskaras by your actions and thoughts, at least from now. They make, of course, promises, but they are not promises to themselves. They are promises to somebody else, and therefore they have no power, they have no reason behind it. Because unless you involve yourself in the promise, and then you say, I promised that old man in Shahjahanpur. But it was your promise. I know it was a moment of weakness. I shouldn't have done it. I belong to another culture. So we suffer, we go on suffering, we will go on suffering. Because as people would have read in the whispers, again and again, Babaji talks of the impending cataclysms of nature, impending great destruction, impending terrible destruction, impending horrible destruction. And I receive, even today, messages like that. In the most recent message, he has requested me, he has ordered me, he has exhorted me to see that our preceptors, our abhyasis must advance before it is too late. This is for all of you who will see this movie today or tomorrow, or at least sometime during your life when you still have the strength to work upon yourselves. He says, ensure that our abhyasis will advance before it is too late, because such a cataclysm is going soon to occur on this earth as no one can imagine. This is not a threat, it is a promise that if you do what you have to do, what I say, you will be saved from these cataclysms, these horrible things that are waiting, which will engulf all humanity in an utter explosion and devastation of killing and extinction. We have all read about Atlantis, how it was destroyed. We all know how an angel became Lucifer, named Lucifer, became Satan, only ego. And now he is undoing the work of God, or trying to undo the work of God, opposing God's wishes, opposing God's laws, and tempting man and woman to always break God's laws with promises of extreme happiness, extreme wealth, etc. And into that net, human beings are falling. So we don't talk of virtue and vice in Sahaj Marg, as I said in an earlier talk. We talk of the possibility of rising or the inevitability of falling unless we participate in a workout for ourselves, not of the body, but of the spirit. What exactly can Master do to clean samskaras? I asked him this question several times. He said, however much may be the load of samskaras, he had the power to remove it in one sitting. I said, then what is stopping you? He said, you know, the Abhyasi has a nervous system and it will be shattered. The nervous system cannot, you know, like we cannot bear an electric shock. 220 volts, you can die. This is something like, you know, the strongest lightning, which is supposed to have millions of volts energy, magnified into divine, multiplied by divine. We cannot stand it. So the system of Sahaj Marg really ensures that we meditate, strengthen ourselves, strengthen our, shall we say, capacity to bear, heighten it, enhance it, strengthen the nervous system. And as we go on strengthening it, he is able to remove larger and larger areas of samskaras, loads of samskaras, until a time may come when he can remove as many as the samskaras of 100 lifetimes in one sitting. He has shown me, and I have been blessed to have been able to see such a thing happening 2-3 times in my own life when I was with Babaji Maharaj. I have seen the face of a Abhyasi totally transformed in one sitting. I mean, anybody could see it, who had seen him just before the sitting and just after the sitting. They come out as if they are new human beings. I suppose this is in one sense why we call them twice born. See? Because it is almost a physical rebirth for them. And because of the strengthening of the nervous system, I think, that fear goes. And fear of death, as Babuji said, is the last thing to go, because somehow we hold on to it. I said, why do you say we? He said, because only humans have fear of death. Animals don't seem to have fear of death. You have seen in videos of wildlife, a lioness catches hold of a big deer, like a wildebeest, and it just collapses, and finished. It doesn't feel pain, it doesn't bawl. So human beings have this peculiar capacity to suffer loudly. We wail, we call God names, we call him blind. And this again is very unfortunate in the Western developed world. They blame God for everything they have created and praise themselves and indulge in self-aggrandizement for everything God has done, which they claim they have done. Which is a travesty of the truth, which is an insult to God, and an even bigger insult to themselves if they would but understand it. I did it, our technology did it, things like that. And why is your child blind? God. If he is devout, he says, God is in infinite mercy, bless my child with blind eyes. If he is an unbeliever, he says, curse that damn God who made my child blind at birth. Subsequently, the doctor finds out that he had syphilis, which is sure to bring forth blind babies. He doesn't blame it on himself. He says that same God gave me syphilis. Otherwise, why hundreds of people do the same thing and they don't have syphilis and I have it? No. Ranting and raving against the creator of all, including your happiness, including your prosperity, including your health. So Babuji said, as I said the other day, ingratitude is the only sin in Sahaj Marg. Because we receive and we don't even have, the primary human sense, primary human requirement of saying, thank you, Master. But instead we go back, I receive frequent letters. Since I joined Sahaj Marg, I have lost my friends. I have lost the ability to enjoy my food. I have lost the ability to enjoy all those things that I delighted in previous to Sahaj Marg. Is this because of Sahaj Marg? Sometimes they say, honestly, well, you have lost 2, 3 friends, maybe 20 friends, but you have gained 300,000 brothers. Don't you think that's a definite gain? Yes, but they're all abhyasis. Then, of course, we have the repeated wail that my girlfriend left me because she doesn't like Sahaj Marg. Or a woman saying, my husband left me because he doesn't like Sahaj Marg. So I just tell them, you have to choose. We had a couple in Hyderabad, abhyasis both. But the wife was dead against Sahaj Marg because she thought it was taking his husband away from her. They had 2 children, small children, 4 and 2. And he said, I will not go for satsang. But he was surreptitiously going like so many people do, you see. One day he left for office with his briefcase, dark glasses, pen, said goodbye to his wife. After he left, she saw the newspaper that Babuji had arrived in Hyderabad the previous evening from Delhi. Immediately she put 2 and 2 together and said, this errant husband of mine has gone to see him definitely. So when he came back in the evening, she berated him and she said, you are a liar, did you not go there? He said, yes, I went. Why didn't you tell me? He said, because you won't like it. But you have been found out in a lie. He said, I didn't tell you a lie. I said, I'm just going and I went. She said, if you go again, I will leave you. Next morning, he told her, I'm going to Babuji Maharaj, and went. In the evening, he came back and found a note on the table with the keys of the house, saying, I have left for my home, and she had taken the babies with her. Next morning, he went to Babuji and, wept out his heart and told Babuji, this is what has happened, what should I do? Babuji said, you have come to a stage when you have to choose between your master or your wife. He determinedly told him, I choose you, master, I don't want my wife. 3 days later, his wife came back. This is the secret of renunciation. When you are able to renounce with your heart, with a full will, renunciation has no meaning. Like the emperor Janaka, who renounced everything, but he was the emperor of the whole territory of that desh. So renunciation means taking it out of here and throwing it out. You still live the same life. You may do what you do, but you don't find pleasure or pain. In fact, it is what we call Nishkama Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga, which does not have desire behind it. So that is how renunciation works, you see. But if all the time you say, oh, how can I revise, how can I revise, how can I give this up, how can I give that up, and my wife, no, mama mia, how can I do that? As Babuji said, stick to your wife, stick to married life, stick to marital pleasures, this or that. But when you say that, you have these two. That is where I think we have this old saying, all this and heaven too. But I prefer to say heaven and all this too. And later modified it to master and all this too. That can come only when I accept master only in my life. When the rest has to be there because we are in a material life. I have to travel, I go by train or by air. I have to eat, so I eat. Whatever I am given in accordance with one of the maxims which says, eat what is put before you with love. If it is sweet, I take it, I am not conscious. If it is sour, I take it, I am not conscious. When Babuji was in my house, one day I saw that, he used to sit here and I was next to him, then my father, then my Krishna and whoever else was there. He had eaten half of his food. I came a little late, sat down and I found there was no salt in anything. My wife had probably been in, as she said, constant remembrance, So I said, Babuji, there was no salt in anything. How did you eat it? He said, I never see the taste of what I eat. See? So when people gave him what they liked, he took what they liked because they liked it. And he took it because they gave it with love. It's like Lord Rama accepting that small bit of mud which a squirrel brought to create the bridge between India and Lanka. See? He did not say, what will I do with this? As they say in the English language, many a mickle make a tabakal. Many teaspoonfuls make a cup. Many cupfuls make a tank. Many tankfuls make the ocean. Nothing is to be ignored, nothing is to be thrown away, nothing is to be, shall we say, what is the correct word for ninda? Disparaged. Nothing is to be disparaged. In the Veda, there is a first saying, Annam na nindyat. Do not disparage food. Do not give it a bad name. See, who will eat this? The four-letter word that Americans commonly use. Sugar Henry Isaac Tom. Who will eat this? You are disparaging food and food will be denied to you. Respectfully, he says, no, I cannot, I don't want, I am full. Similarly, when a beggar comes, I have seen, very nice, elevated people, they're saying, Baba, excuse me, I have nothing for you today. They don't say, get out. Watchman, drive him out. That is an indignity imposed upon a fellow human being. When you say, I have nothing for you today, please excuse me, that is a human being confessing to another human being his inability to help. Acceptable, understood. So we have so many books on etiquette and ethics. I was amused to read of a book on etiquette at the dining table of the Queen of England or the King of England. You can cough, you can sneeze, but you cannot let anything cough from the other end. That's what it says in the book of ethics. Etiquette at the Queen's table. And I believe there was a time when you were dining with royalty, you could not get up and ask permission to go to the bathroom. And there was such a convivial dinner where they were wining and dining for hours. And one fellow actually died at table because of a burst bladder. It is a matter of history, not lore. No. So we have to have ethics and etiquette based on humanity. What is good between human beings? Is it right to defame somebody, to deny someone? Is it right to be avaricious and hoard for oneself without sharing with others? I am happy to report, that my son Krishna, some 4 or 5 years ago, came to me one day and said, I don't know, I understand Babuji's words, but it's a terrible thing, He said, I said, what? He said, the more I give away, the more comes. I said, that is the law. Babuji said nature is always on the lookout for such a person to distribute its wealth. And the more he distributes, the more it gives him to distribute. For it, nature says, here is one I see who can distribute what I give. And his aperture is enlarged more and more, Like I said about Babuji's transmission, which started as a fine wire, became a tube, became a pipe, and then had no boundaries. Nature gives to such people, not to be kept, because if you keep it, it becomes again a wire and nothing will flow through it. And what is dammed stinks. A river which is dammed stinks. Water which is stored in the house without allowing it to flow through the pipe stinks. So you either have pure, clean, flowing water from which you may take whatever you need, but thou shalt not dam it up for the use. Or you have a stinking 1,000 gallons, 10,000 gallons of water, which even you cannot use later. This is the theory of sharing. I have told the story of Duryodhana and Karna so many times. Lord Krishna used to praise Karna because Karna was one who gave everything, including the kavacha that he was wearing, his earrings which he was wearing, which kept him protected. And Duryodhana said, what is so great about giving? So Lord Krishna said, would you like to try it, Duryodhana? He said, yes, of course. Don't think I can't give, Krishna. He addressed him very perfectly. Lord Krishna waved his hand and created 3 mountains of gold. He said, give it away. He sat there with his towel spread before him, And whoever passed, he took out one nugget of stone of gold. Small pebbles, big pieces of gold. And 1,000 years later, Lord Krishna came and there was no difference because these things, how much can you give out of a mountain? He said, Duryodhana, you are still here? He said, Lord, he said, Krishna, you are a crook. Who can give away such a thing? He said, you accept you can't do it? He said, yes, I accept. He said, Karna, come here. Give away these 3 mountains of gold. Karna sat down. 3 Brahmins came. He said, one for you, one for you, one for you, and got up. And walked away happily. Burden, removed from his shoulders. And Krishna said, you see, Duryodhana, it is not so easy to give. You received 3 mountains of gold, but you could not give them away because the heart was missing. So to give, you need a heart. To receive, you need only a mind. And it is generally corrupt, it is generally self-centered. It has no other orientation, but only self-orientation. So never think with your head, should I give or not? If the heart says give all, you give all and walk out. The other day I was surprised to read about the great Bade Ghulam Ali Khan, It seems he gave and gave and gave. And I was amazed to know he had actually gone to Pakistan, preferring to live there. But there people opposed his singing about Indian gods, Indian bhajans. So he came back to Bombay and re-entered India. And he had no money. So his devotees, his aficionados, the lovers of his music, they got together and collected 20,000 rupees in those days and gave it to him, who put it in his pocket. After his concert that day, somebody came and was weeping, He said, I have no money even for my food. He just put his hand into his pocket and gave all the 20,000 rupees. Count not before you give. How much does this beggar deserve? 2 rupees. Oh, he looks more poor, give him 20 rupees. We have no right to decide on what another man needs. We have only a right to decide that I must reduce my needs so that I can give with others. Live simply and in tune with nature. That's one of the maxims. If you obey this, you can give and give and give. The cup will be eternally replenished. I shall not want. Quoting from the Bible. See? Babuji did not explicitly or implicitly praise charity. He did not believe in charity. He believed in fulfilling the needs of people. He said, if you find a beggar, don't refuse him, but feed him. That's what he needs first. But that's a need to which he will attend last, if at all, because he will waste his money on drink. Because that is a solace, something to give you solace for the nonce until you get another 8 and a bit somewhere. So, food is the most cherished object of self-sacrifice. So they say, feed. And another secret he said was, if you give a pandit or a priest who comes to do the puja, if you usually give 2 rupees, one day you give 10 rupees, he'll be happy. But before he leaves your house, he'll think you could as well have given me 20 rupees. No satisfaction. If a rich man gives him 100 rupees, he'll say, look at this mansion, and he gives me 100 rupees. But if you feed him, he'll say, please, no more. So that is the merit of feeding. So that is why in India we are so familiar with the idea of poor feeding. But Babuji also emphasized what I think Lao Tse taught. If you give a man a fish, you feed him once. If you teach him to fish, you enable him to feed himself all his life. So Babuji insisted that while we must help others, we must also teach them how to help themselves. So our sadhana, our practice says, you have to have 3 sittings at least when you join the system. Subsequently, you have to meditate every morning and do whatever is prescribed as a daily ritual. But Sundays you must come for general satsang. Sundays you have to come for general satsang. Somebody asked him why. He said, because whoever is there in satsang, I see them like in a television screen, They're always before me. If they don't come there, I don't see them. If I don't see them, I may forget to include them in my transmission. So when we don't go to satsang, it is not just the merit or value of that satsang that we lose. We may lose every day more and more of it because he doesn't see us anymore. What of major functions when we have 4 days, 2 sittings every day? He said every sitting is important because each sitting adds to the effect of the previous one, And if you miss one, you have missed it. The chain is broken and you start again all over. So satsang at bandaras, as we call them, or annual functions, birthdays, etc., is very important. Satsang and presence at every sitting is very important. So you see how Sahaj Marg is a very clean, uncomplicated system. There are no complications. The 10 maxims are all positive, tell you what to do. They don't speak of what you must not do. Therefore, we commonly say there are no do's and don'ts in Sahaj Marg. The do's are natural. Arise before sunrise and dawn. This is a natural thing. Human beings have a natural tendency to arise like that. But with modern civilization, rooms, bedrooms, curtains, carpets, to deaden sound, to prevent the sunlight at sunrise from coming in and waking us up. What wakes us up really is the actinic rays of light which make us open our eyes. You understand? Not alarms. Because when you have an alarm, you see in every American movie, they push it off or put the pillow over it if they don't know where to press it. Alarms only make us annoyed and permit us to sleep even longer. I have never had an alarm in my life. It is a question of willpower. When you make up your will at night that I shall wake up at 5, not I shall try to wake up at 5. The mind says, aha, you will try. Let me see how you try. You say, I will wake up tomorrow at 5. You will find you are awake at 5 minutes to 5. Absolutely every time. I've had sometimes to go to the airport at 2 o'clock. I can wake up at 1:55 by myself. Because I am the master of my mind, which is what Babuji said. He said, when you use the mind to train the mind, that which has been your master so far, because man is slave of his mind, you become the master of your mind. This is the essence of spirituality. So 45 plus 23, 68.